Allow me to introduce Prasad Saraph. He's a veteran people leader from the pharma industry. He's got a 20-year history in that space where he was building and nurturing high-performance teams across different cultures and countries. Since 2021, he's followed his own passion, and he created a high-tech startup company called PB Jam, which aims to empower professionals to take charge of their own development via novel, simple, effective, and science-based approaches. All right, and so Prasad is on a mission to democratize professional development for today's professionals. And Prasad himself and his family fell in love with Kansas City in the US, in Missouri, and that's where they call home. He also enjoys local breweries, cafes, barbecues, and jogging, and then capoeira. And he can explain the capoeira because I'm sure that keep him very fit. Over to you, Prasad.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to be part of this forum. I've been attending this for past many months, and it's always very nice to see familiar faces and the feeling of camaraderie that has been built over time by Bernie and Margaret. So very happy to join all of you. As Bernie said, my passion is with people. And one of the approaches that I love and that I'm trying to bring to the world through my tech startup is peer-based behavior modifications as an approach to professional development in the modern workplace. So today we are going to look a little bit into professional development and peer-based behavior modification. But most interesting for me and for all of us is that we are going to do a group work of about 20 to 30 minutes where we will split into groups of 3 each, and we will experience the power of peer-based approaches using one of the techniques. And then we will come back together, share a little bit of feedback on what we found in this kind of a real live group work. And then we will have some Q&A, and that will be it for today's session. Let me share my screen, and Bernie has coached me on how to do this, so hopefully it goes well. Perfect. Does everybody see my screen?
You're up and running.
Great. So what we will do today is, here is a short outline. We will work through some of the introductory parts because, you know, everybody has a little bit of a different impression of what professional development is and what it is not. So let's all have a common base. Then we will get into this quick demo of the peer power. We will use a tool called Feed Forward Interview. And once we do this demo, which all of you can experience, we will come back for a quick group feedback. The goal for today's session is for me is to let you all experience the power of peer-based approaches in professional development. So at the end of the session, you can tell me if you experienced it or not, and I love the feedback. So let me know how it goes. Yeah. So in 2022, as we all sit together in the month of July, we all are hearing about the great resignation, the low employee engagement, and also the long-term shortage of the right skilled workforce. So in this kind of an environment, the question that we all pose is, how do you stand out as an employer of choice? Whether we are a small firm of 2 people, whether we are a mid-sized firm of 500 people, or whether we are a giant global company of 100,000 people. This question is there in front of all of us. And this is mainly because if you look at the participants in today's workplace, the modern workplace, both the employees and managers, then the expectations are changing. And I love this kind of a summary that Jim Clifton did. This is also from 2016. It's a Gallup report, and Jim Clifton is the CEO of Gallup. So at the start of the report, he gives kind of an executive summary. And in that summary, he has this graphic saying what is the change that they are seeing when they survey the people around the globe. And you can see that the focus is shifting from material kind of level to more towards the purpose and passions and what is the outcome, not just as a paycheck, but as a overall satisfaction and growth for the employees. Now, this kind of change is making a big problem for everybody. So what is your solution? Some companies and many companies are trying higher pay, more benefits, flexible work. They're trying big brand name. But in this thing, an interesting observation is from Facebook. So Facebook has all of these attributes. They pay well, they have a lot of benefits, they have flexible work. It's a great brand name. If you say that I have worked at Facebook, it adds a lot of value. But despite all of these things, the average employee tenure at Facebook, even prior to the pandemic, was only 2.5 years, which is quite surprising. Yeah. Now, this is not to say that people and companies are not doing anything to change this situation. So there is a lot of work that's ongoing. As you can see, there is around 30% increase in per employee spend on professional development if you look at the time period of 2008 to 2019. And this is globally, it is not just North America or Europe, it is globally all across the world. But despite all of these changes, every 6 seconds, there are 10 employees who are leaving their jobs voluntarily in US as of the BLS data from May of 2022. Now, this is very significant that despite all of the things that companies and people are trying to do, somehow there is still this lack of satisfaction and excitement about the work that people are trying to do. And this is where I always remember the great book by Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. Yeah. So we have done a lot of great work in organizational development and professional development over the past years and decades. But it was based on the old world perspectives. I would say that they were based on pre-technology, pre-pandemic kind of understanding of what drives people to come to work and deliver. So of course, nowadays, what we need is new perspectives because our workplace is new and the people's perceptions are new. And this is very, very true in professional development, which is what we are going to look into further. So in professional development, what we need to do, and if you read the research, if you talk to people, whether it is from Gallup, whether it is from any other kind of a company, what you will see is people are looking for engagement, growth, and the ability and opportunity to thrive. You know, how do you do this? So people are looking for empowerment, not just for employees, but also for people leaders. And they want to define what they need as individuals to be a better participant in this modern workplace, rather than the company or their bosses telling them what they need to work on. So that empowerment is quite an important aspect for the modern workplace. In this kind of a modern workplace, there is also kind of an ask for arming the people with tools and approaches that are individualized. So people are not very happy with the canned courses that are typically available. They want the tools and learnings that are sustainable. So they don't want a shiny binder of training material that they will get at the end of the training, only to put it in a drawer in one of their desks, never to bring it out again. And they're also looking for visible and verifiable outcomes. So people are less happy just to receive a certificate or a continuing education credit, but they are looking for validation from their stakeholders, whether this is the workplace stakeholders like their bosses and colleagues, or outside of workplace like their spouses and their friends and their industry peers. But people are looking for that visible and verifiable feedback and outcomes. Needless to say, there is a need to leverage technology. I mean, we have great technology that is coming around. I mean, the session that we are having today, the Zoom session, that is one example. 15 years back, this was very difficult to imagine. Even Skype didn't have enough bandwidth to accommodate more than 10 people at a time. But nowadays with Zoom, there is a lot more capability and flexibility. And that's the technology that we need to leverage so that the access is there for wider audiences, and also the effectiveness is higher. So if we look at professional development approaches, here is kind of a short comparison. It's not perfect, but it gives you a flavor. And I have picked like the two extremes of the approaches that are currently available and popular. In row one, you see that we have a lot of online courses, whether it is LinkedIn University, whether it is Udemy, or any of your preferred provider that is available to you from your workplace. You will see a lot of very good quality online content that is available. And because it is online, because it is scanned, the ease of access is very high. You can just log in and you can access these materials. And at a pretty reasonable cost, I would say. It's not like you have to pay thousands upon dollars. So the ease of access is very high. Unfortunately, because these are canned courses, the individualization is very low. And it is always the case that you can learn how to handle people who have certain personality types. If, maybe it is the disc profile that you learn, and you know that, well, if the person is red, like a director, then you know what to ask. But very few times you will encounter a person that is pure red or a pure blue or a pure yellow. And mostly in project settings, you are going to meet a team where one person is red and yellow and the other person is green and blue, and maybe third person is something else. And how do you then approach this situation? It's very hard to learn just from these canned courses. And because of that, their effectiveness in terms of the sustainability and the learnings is also pretty low. On the other end of this spectrum, we have the individual coaches and mentors that are accessible at work or outside of the work. There are great kind of companies, whether it is Better Up, whether it is kind of smaller mom and pop shops that provide you with access to great coaches and mentors. But at the end of the day, these are basically an individual mentor. So the ease of access is low. I mean, many times I have seen that individual coaches, they have a waiting time of anywhere between 6 months to a year for the new enrollee. So the ease of access is quite low. The costs are also pretty high. This is not something that you can do by paying like $50 or $100. You have to shell out significant money over a significant period of time to gain benefits. But the positive side of this is the individualization is very, very high. So these coaches will really figure out what works for you as an individual and provide it to you. Unfortunately, the effectiveness varies. This is simply because, you know, each coach and mentor have a different style, and not everyone will find that style appealing or acceptable to their own problems. So this is where we bring in a new approach, and this is the peer-based behavior modification for professional development. And in this approach, what we want to do is we want to have a very high ease of access. So we want to make this online and accessible to everybody. We want to have very high individualization, and that is there simply by the virtue of how this technique works. And because of the way the technique works and the science behind it, which dates back to 1980s, the effectiveness is also very high. So normally the question is that, well, what exactly is this approach? So peer-based modification is driven by peers. So who are the peers? These are professionals with similar experience levels, typically coming from different employers, different companies, but with complementary skills and needs. They are done in a small group setting, 3 peers each, and with a skilled facilitator. Now, this facilitator is not necessarily a coach or mentor, and we might be able to touch a little bit on what the facilitators are like. And the more important thing is that all of these efforts are driven by science and tech. That's what makes sure that we have the effectiveness and the visibility of outcomes and the support for sustainability in the long term. So why it works? So here is some history. It is driven by multiple scientific disciplines, as you can see, starting with neuroscience, which dates back to 1800s. organizational and industrial psychology that has roots in 1900s, behavioral sciences from 1920s, and operations management, which is from 1940s, more related to the, I would say, the automotive revolution that started with Henry Ford and then spread around the world. In all of this, all of these great kind of sciences, nowadays we can leverage the online platform where we are incorporating machine learning and artificial intelligence, which makes it amazing. So you can see that I'm very excited about it. Some of the kind of the facets of this peer-based behavior modification, the reason that it works is that we are able to create safe spaces with peers, you know. The second thing that it works is that there is a short interval control or a repeating feedback rather than one-off things or less frequent interactions. And the last part is the ability of individualization, because we all are human beings. We all have different fingerprints, and just like that, we also have different requirements and needs for our development that change over time. And all of these aspects, they are incorporated, and that is why the peer-based behavior modification works. So the question is that, well, let's do a short demo because I always believe in experiencing things firsthand. One of the tools that comes from this inventory of many different sciences and approaches is called a feed-forward interview. And that is what we are going to do today as groups. So let's look into the feed-forward interview. Now, this originated in a thing called appreciative inquiry approach. So this is more from the science side, the management science in the 80s. And what it focuses on is the positive aspects to see that, well, what worked in the past and what can work in the future. So they have a loop, it's called 4Ds. So everybody has some kind of short form. So here is theirs. And it goes through this kind of a discovery, then dream, design, and destiny kind of a phase. We won't spend too much time on this. I will give you guys also a link where there is a report, an online paper that walks you through all of the details. And it is a standalone structure. What research has shown, because this is in use since 1990s, that these feed-forward interviews, they really influence our emotions, and they strengthen the bonding between people that are conducting these feed-forward interview interactions. So it has a two-way benefit. One is that you have some learning for yourself, and at the same time, the two other people with which you are going to do these feed-forward interviews, you will develop some bonding. You will have better understanding of each other. That may carry much further than just this session. Yeah. So now we will do this feed-forward interview, and let me give you guys an idea of how this will work. What we will do is that we will split into groups of 3 each randomly. And yes, I mean, for this exercise, we will assume that these random groups are the right peers for each other. That is our assumption, and it normally works out well. We will take turns of 10 minutes each within these groups, go alphabetically by the last name, and one member will be interviewed by the other two. So the one kind of caution or hint that I will have for all of you is go slow and follow through, because your best insights will not come if you rush through the process. So let the process take its time, go through the questions, and see where it leads you. Yeah. Here is the framework, and there is a lot of stuff here. Don't worry. I will give you guys a PDF file. I will post it in our chat so you can just get it. And all of these things are there in that PDF file. What essentially you see is on the left-hand side, you see things to talk about for the interviewee. And on the right-hand side, you see the questions that the interviewers have to ask to the interviewee in each of the topics. And it is just a linear flow. So you start, the interview starts with the first point in the first row on the left side, saying that let me narrate one of my success stories. And then based as that narration is going on, the other two interviewers will ask the questions that you see on the right side. Once that success story is done, the next thing that happens is that the interviewee will talk about a challenge or a disadvantage that they have overcome in life that has helped them or that will help them to find their personal success goal. Yeah. And the last part is that given these insights, both from their success story as well as the challenge, the interviewee will try to conclude about their personal success goal. Yeah. And interviewers will make sure that the interviewee is talking about the conditions that help them achieve desirable changes in terms of their personal success goal. The last point for the interviewee is to think of your current situation, current work environment, and how this personal success code or the learnings from both your success stories and your challenges will help you in the near future. That's kind of the aim of these feed forward interviews. Of us,
That's funny, Bernie, because I didn't know you were doing that and I was setting it up. I was just going to do it random with everybody, with 3 people in a group, because they're not going to have enough time to talk, I don't think.
Well, there's 4 and 3, so there's actually only
Okay.
7, so it's not even balanced.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Let's see that in our group, I think Margaret, you are the first one by alphabetical last name. So tell us about a success story that you have had in life. Something that you remember, cherish, enjoy, that brings a smile to your face every time you think about that period of your life.
oh, I was so not prepared for this today. Let me what brings a smile to my I have actually started many businesses. When I think of the way I've started many businesses, it always brings a smile to my face, because I always hear most people with a sound mind would not have done it the way I do it. But I tend to jump into things and I like to be sporadic and just do things and not overthink or worry about consequences. Enjoy the ride. There.
So yes, I mean that is kind of the overall philosophy in life, right? But what would have been a peak moment or period in this kind of a philosophy with which you are living? It can be from the recent past. It doesn't have to be from very old times.
I think Margaret Ann could probably relay a story about when she was running her bar and she had music, setting up musical acts in there. And I remembered a couple of stories about that, Margaret Ann. You should relay those.
Bernie, I've had so many stories. What story did I tell you? I don't know.
Well, it was a big fish. It was a big fish. It was at least 5 feet long. Sturgeon. It must have been a sturgeon.
Yeah, I find this really hard to pinpoint one. I'm kind of an event planner, and I just do things sporadically. So I've never really, like when it says, one of your success stories. God, I'm really, you know what? I'm lost. I don't really know what one of my success stories were. I feel for me, it was just jumping into things when other people wouldn't do it, and I would just jump in. That's my success. I go, if it makes me happy, I just do it. I'm not a traditional employee. I haven't really been a traditional employee.
Yeah, but think about the last event that you planned, right? And that made you happy.
Let's see. Okay, could somebody else go first? Jeepers.
Sure, I'll go. Prasad, I'll go ahead. I think success stories last few years involve golf tournaments for charity, for the purpose of charity.
Yeah.
And Margaret Ann has helped out, and she's shown me a lot of things I did not know. Some I already kind of suspected, but even just bringing things together, and finding the right resources, and right resources are people that are willing to get in there and also work with you to doing the deed, bringing the charity or the tournament together. It's also having a supplier that takes a lot of the heavy lifting work off your shoulder. The course that Margaret Ann introduced me to, it's perfect. They handle the entire registration process, whether you're the golfer or the sponsor. And it's perfect. It's because that's aggravating, right? And then you start having to handle money, etc. Far better it goes in one box. It reminded me of certain events where I was involved in social committees back in the hospital. And again, you put things together, you get the right people around you. It really helps a lot, and it brings a team spirit to moments of where you're doing stuff, and you're getting to know people too. And that's the other part. It's a networking piece, and not so much here buy my stuff. It's more like, let me get to know you, right? And because everybody has a cool story, and everybody has a fascinating tale. And they always bring something new, and you end up learning new things out of that box.
Right. I think you are kind of approaching the whole situation and the group with no aim or no kind of inherent goal apart from getting to know them and having fun with them, right?
And the charity event itself, but that goal kind of works because everybody's going to the same thing.
And to just add to Bernie, so that would be it. Like the success is taking a bunch of people that they just can't see, and then creating something that they actually step up to the plate. They have fun. They're glad they went. They're excited. Gives them a purpose as well. And I think that's the success. The success is kind of just being the leader. To show that there is, like, we can all have a purpose. It doesn't matter. We're all just a little cog in the wheel. Together we are together. Everyone achieves more. That's what success is to me. Team building.
Right. And the thing is that the success that we all experienced in the past, and Margaret, you saw that, yes, though there are a lot of things that are successful in our lives, when the time comes to really say that, well, what was that success, right? To try to visualize it, it's always difficult because our mind, genetically, the way it works is that we remember our failures more distinctly than our successes, right? I always give this example that we descended from our ancestors who could grip the trees securely and who had propensity to eat sugar and fats. Because those ancestors who didn't like sugar and fats are long gone. They didn't survive, So our memories are always around failures, but in the professional context, those memories are actually not very constructive memories. And hence it needs an active effort, a conscious effort on everybody's part to build memories of the successes. Because those strengths that we all have individually is what drives the success at the workplace. And those strengths more than make up for any weaknesses that we might have. In fact, that's the reason why we work as teams and as companies and not just as individuals. So this personal success code, it's an amazing exercise where we have to think, well, what was that example? Why did I feel good? Why does it still bring smile to my face, right? And it doesn't necessarily always come from the professional environment. In my own example, it is of jogging. I started jogging pretty late in life. I must have been about 27, 28 when I first tried to run. And you can imagine I couldn't even run like half a mile. I was out of breath within like 3 minutes, right? And I kept running, and I never thought that I would be able to cross the 10-minute per mile milestone, right? I could do like maybe 15, 16 minutes a mile. That was where I started. But I just kept running, kept running. And one fine day I could do under 10. I still remember that day. It was in Berkeley, California, and I was running the normal route along my favorite route, which is called the Gourmet Ghetto. So there are about 100 odd restaurants on that street. So there's always very strong temptations to stop running and go into a cafe, right? But I was running down that road and I was looking at my watch and I realized that, hey, I mean, I was almost at that mile mark and the watch was still in the single digits. So of course I ran a little bit faster, but I could make it. And then I kind of tried to reflect. I mean, if I today try to reflect what helped me, it was that persistence and consistency. Without taking the kind of tension or the pressure or the stress of I have to achieve that milestone. Just keep doing what I was doing, which was essentially running, and the simple techniques like letting your breath out when you step down and taking the breath in when the next time you lift your foot up. Those simple things which I was focusing on and trying to do. So that is kind of my personal success story. And what I learned from that is again the same thing, that avoid taking stress or the pressure, believe in the process, and be persistent. And the success will kind of come through. It may not come at the same time that we all imagine, but it will eventually come.
So Prasad, everything you just said, those four things are exactly what I'm in line with. So
Yeah.
when I practice anything in my life, it is that. Even now, with whether it's Connect Ottawa, Unified Remote Work, I just know that I don't give up. I just keep going one step at a time, change things up. And then all of a sudden, when you get your first sale or your first client or your first feedback of somebody feeling good about themselves or whatever it is, that's what makes me feel good. Because it's not, it wasn't that's propelling it. It's the sense of, I know that we can all do it if we just keep doing it, including myself, right? Because self-talk is our worst, enemy. So I just love what you just said. That's good. Yeah.
Well, I think the self-talk can either boost you or drop you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you have peers or folks around you that even if you're doing a run and you're doing a race with a group of other people and they know where you started from, they're going, hey, keep going, right? You give that the words of encouragement. But I think where you're getting the biggest boost is when you look down at your watch and still single digit, even though you hoofed it a little bit more. That's okay, because if your body can do it, that means you're stretching a little bit further, right? As long as you don't collapse yourself. If it's 107 degrees outside, I wouldn't consider running for the 9-minute mile. I'd have to be really fit for that magic moment. But that's training up, right? Training into that space. Like, it's like now you're becoming a true athlete. You're any conditions, I can go and do what I got to do.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's when we think about the challenges, right? So one of the challenges that I have faced is that I have done about 10 to 12 different jobs in my 20 years. And one of the challenges has always been that when I come into the new position, in a new job, with a new team, in a new culture, how do I make myself presentable so that I am not a threat to that team, and I am not treated as, oh, okay, so here is somebody else who has sent this guy to fix up the things, right? And this has been an ongoing challenge, and it is never easy, no matter how many times I have done it. It is always a challenge. No matter how much I try to be kind of calm and slow and kind of approach people saying, well, this is a change that we all have to go through together. There is always one or two people who say that, well, oh no, that was not the right thing, and so on. When my success finally came through in my I would say in my last job that I did from 2016 through 2020, and that was with a team where we had to undergo a lot of changes. And we did actually went through 2 acquisitions and mergers. So our original company was sold to one company, and then that company sold that particular site to another company. And I said, like, well, yes, this is very challenging, and it is always that kind of a fear in the stomach, how this is going to work out. But I kept myself a very simple metric. I said, like, well, let me make sure that I don't lose anybody of value in this process, that I keep my team together, and I was successful in doing that, and that was very satisfying. Of course, I realized I was successful only after going through the process. While I was going through the process, I never thought that I would be successful, because everybody was tense, everybody was under pressure, and there was a lot of these kind of negative feelings floating around. But that is still my challenge. And I always kind of think, well, what can I do different? What can I do better next time I have to encounter something?
Prasad, do you want to kind of describe or inquire amongst the folks here as to what they encountered?
Absolutely. Yeah. So hopefully everybody can see again the screen that I'm sharing.
Yes.
So I would say that here are kind of the three things. Very simple. First of all, like, reflect on how effective was the feed-forward interview for you, to gauge your personal success code and rate it from 1 to 10, 10 being most effective. The second question that we should reflect on is that what would you do differently tomorrow based on the feed-forward interview, and list 1 or 2 actions for yourself as to what would be different. And the last thing is to see if you want to use this feed-forward interview at your workplace. And if you see that possibility, in what capacity would you like to utilize that? I would like to invite, like, maybe 1 or 2 representatives from the groups who can talk to these 3 points.
What's your opinion?
So I was the one being interviewed. I felt really great talking about the success. So if I were to rate, I would say 8 or 9 about my comfort level. What would I do differently is I realized, I had the same, I think I need to reflect on how to present some of those stories with brevity. I felt I was like looking for words, even though I was overwhelmed with happiness sharing those stories. I couldn't find the word. So maybe what I don't do is really kind of like, have those feelings compacted into a few sentences. And would you use FFI? I guess I definitely know when I go and talk to people and I want to talk to about my work, I'm going to kind of, as I said, reflect on some of the work and kind of have a nice storyline. I don't know if I were to interview someone, I'm going to go through that document and maybe try to implement some of it when I talk to other people. But this was a great exercise, Prasad. Yeah.
Thanks, Bernie. I was one of the people interviewing Abhi, so that's interesting selection there. But yes, for me, I think what he says is true, is the fact that that interview helped him realize, you could see him grappling for words here and there, like he says. And I think it will give him a lot of insight into how to carry that story across, because I think when we heard him telling his story, you could see that excitement, that shock of what was happening in his space through the story he was telling. So definitely an effective gauge to what he was going through. So I think the rating there for him was accurate, very accurate. I agree with that. And then based on that same story, I'm in a space now with my business where I'm trying to increase my visibility. So definitely I would look at the same thing, the storyline. And I'm a copywriter, content creator. So of course the story is very important, and I'm busy reworking mine at the moment. And then, yes, I probably would, because part of what I do every day is interviewing people for case studies, and definitely asking the right questions, getting real emotive input from people goes a long way to getting the story going. So absolutely. Thank you.
Over to you, Margaret. Oh, and
Place, the expectations are changing. Be aware of that. Use the new science that is coming up So peer-based behavior modification is one of them. It is not the only approach. And the last thing is that don't be afraid to try new approaches. You will always feel the pressure to use what is already there in your company, with your HR, with your boss. But don't be afraid to try out something new, and much success to all of you.